Hello, it's Sparrow, and for this video I am going to show you how I turn this into this. There are a lot of different products and ways to stiffen tatted lace, but for this video I'm just going to be focusing on my personal favorite. This is Aleene's fabric stiffener and draping liquid. Other tools I will be using include this 3-inch diameter foam cylinder, which I have covered in plastic wrap, some pins, a clean junk towel, and a sponge. I'm using a makeup sponge because that's what I had on hand, but a foam craft brush or kitchen sponge would work just as well. To start, I'm going to dilute the stiffening solution with water. The directions say not to dilute more than 50%, so that's what I'm aiming for here. And I'm using a measuring cup to try to be as precise as possible. I found that diluting the solution really helps the thread soak this up, and you get a much better result. Using it straight from the bottle, it ends up just sitting on the surface of the thread and not really soaking in. It doesn't look as nice, and it also ends up a little bit brittle and cracks off, so we definitely don't want that. After I've made sure my solution is thoroughly mixed, the lace piece is going to get dunked right in there. I'm pushing it down with my stir stick to really get any air bubbles out, and I'm going to let it sit in the solution for about 3 to 5 minutes to make sure it's really saturated. You can really see all of the air bubbles rising to the surface here, and the goal is to get as many of those air bubbles out as we can. Once it's done soaking, I'm going to blot it off with the towel and make sure that there's no excess before beginning to pin it to the form. If you wanted to, you could draw some guidelines on your form to make sure that everything is nice and even. Just make sure that you put the guidelines under the plastic wrap, or you might end up with ink stains on your piece. I did not bother drawing guidelines myself, and it was quite fiddly trying to get everything even, so I regret not doing that, and I will definitely be making guidelines on my form for any future crowns that I decide to make. The directions also say that you should wear gloves, which I also did not do. This stuff is non-toxic, so it won't really hurt you, but it was a bit messy and started to dry really quickly and just kind of dried my skin out. So learn from my mistakes here and definitely wear gloves. The pinning process took quite a while for me, so it had already started to dry by the time I was done. So I went ahead and started applying the second coat using the sponge to really get it in there. And then blotting it off again, trying to make sure that there wasn't too much buildup on the surface and no little globs or anything in there. Depending on how stiff you want your piece to be, you could do this a couple more times, letting each layer dry for a few minutes in between. Personally, I found that 2 coats gave me a result that I was happy with. I had some good structure, but it was still a little bit flexible, which is what I was looking for. Another thing that I did in this video that you should not do is pushing the pins all the way in. It wasn't that big of a deal, but a few of the pins had like little globs of glue stuck underneath of them when I pulled them back out after it was all dry. So I had to kind of crack those and break those off. But if you avoid sticking the pins all the way into the form, that should minimize that issue. Even though the solution dries to the touch really fast, I recommend letting it air dry overnight before removing it from the form. Now the draping liquid dries to a fairly even matte finish, so this next step is completely optional, but I do like to use an acrylic spray sealant just to finish everything off. This spray sealer that I'm using is also from Aleene's. It's a little bit different than like a regular spray paint sealant in that it will stay a little bit more flexible. And that's it. Here is what it looks like once it's all dry. And just for comparison, here is one that I use the gloss finish spray on. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of difference. It does have a little bit more shine to it that the camera didn't really pick up very well, but I think that with more layers, the gloss finish would show up a little bit better. So really just personal choice which one you want to use. Any leftover glue solution can be stored in an airtight container for later, and everything else should clean up easily with just soap and water. The pattern for this mini crown that I'm using in this tutorial is up on my Patreon right now as part of the pattern club for the month of January, and it will be available on my website next month. So I will put a link to both my Patreon and my website in the description box below. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and thanks for watching.